Good day, Academy Nation and friends, and welcome to the first post-NAIC webinar of 2025, where American Academy of Actuary staffers will review hot topics discussed during the National Association of Insurance Commissioners spring meeting in Indianapolis and look ahead to the summer 2025 meeting in Minneapolis as well. My name is Ted Gotch, and I'm the Policy Content and Publications Manager at the Academy. I'll be your host for this webinar, where my fellow staffers will share their insights from the NAIC conference, as well as discuss pending issues likely to be tackled in the near future. I'm here with my colleagues, Amanda Barry-Moylanen, Will Beneke, Rob Fisher, and Matthew Williams to break down the goings-on from Indianapolis, and you'll hear more from them in a moment. But first, this is a previously recorded event, so there will be no questions taken. If you do have comments or queries, feel free to reach out to us at publicpolicy@actuary.org. The slides from this webinar will be available in the Slides and Resources section. Here is a look at the agenda for this event. In a moment, I will be joined by Director of State Public Policy Outreach, Katie Zurich. Then we'll hear from some of our fellow Academy staffers for the specifics of what happened in Indianapolis from each practice area, as well as research. Finally, we'll wrap up with a quick preview of what we have to look forward to at the NAIC summer meeting. But right now, I'd like to bring in Katie, who will share some high-level reflections from the spring meeting. So to get started, Katie, what were some of the highlights of Indianapolis, especially when it came to professionalism and interacting with stakeholders and our volunteers?
Yeah, thanks, Ted. Of course, 2025 has people asking lots of questions. Top of mind are how states are responding to volatile economic indicators, the latest advances in artificial intelligence, and then people are also thinking about uncertainty over decisions at the federal level. But, steady as always, the Academy continued to support and collaborate with the work of the NAIC and state regulators. So on the professionalism side of the Academy coin, Academy President Daryl Knapp and Chairperson of the Actuarial Standards Board, Kevin Dyke, provided updates from the Committee on Qualifications, the ASB, and the ABCD to the 3 actuarial task forces. For those of you following the Academy's work with the NAIC on the life and health knowledge statements, discussions continued on the public comments that LATIF and HATIF received on public exposure of the life illustration actuary and appointed actuary knowledge statements, and then the health appointed actuary knowledge statements as well. A final round of redlining will be submitted to the task forces in the next few weeks, and the Academy will be formally relinquishing the knowledge statements to the NAIC for their future use ahead of the summer national meeting. A couple of other notable highlights from this past meeting. In his inaugural address, NAIC President and North Dakota Commissioner John Gottfried outlined his areas of focus for 2025. Exciting that he's building on former NAIC President and Connecticut Commissioner Andrew May's encouragement to mind the gap throughout 2024. Commissioner Gottfried issued a call to action, inviting regulators, consumer advocates, industry, and other stakeholders to redefine the future of the insurance sector. And there's a whole lot to unpack there. Recognizing the need to navigate the complexities of an evolving industry, Commissioner Gottfried urged attendees to tackle the challenges by embracing collaboration, driving innovation, and ultimately securing the U.S. insurance market as a leader in the global economy. And his call to action really played out in 2 particular sessions. The NAIC's new risk-based capital model governance task force, which is an executive task force, and then in the big data and AI working group meeting, which is under the H committee. So always fun when there's a new task force at the NAIC, and the RBC, I think they're calling it the Mojo Task Force. So RBC Mojo Task Force is really no exception. It was created to develop guiding principles for updating the RBC formulas to address current investment trends with a focus on more RBC precision in the area of asset risk, and also to ensure that insurance capital requirements maintain their current strength and continue to appropriately balance solvency with the availability of products to meet consumer needs. And so the Academy had submitted Joint Practice Council comments on the task force's inaugural charges. We provided verbal comments on a March 17th conference call, as well as in Indianapolis, emphasizing the Academy's commitment to working with the commissioners. And then earlier this week, a cross-practice council team of volunteers representing the 3 practice areas for health, life, and property casualty, as well as the Risk Management and Financial Reporting Council, presented to members of the task force, providing an overview of the existing RBC formulas, some history of each formula and its development, and then current fundamental differences between RBC for health, for life, and for property casualty. So definitely more to come on that. And then another thing we're keeping an eye on is the Big Data and AI Working Group. Pennsylvania Commissioner Mike Humphreys provided an overview of a forthcoming artificial intelligence and machine learning survey of health insurers report that's coming out. The report reflects a survey of 16 states and indicates varied levels of AI adoption across lines of business. So health adoption of AI is at 92%, auto at 88%, home at 70%, and life at 58% adoption. So an interesting mix there. And then Commissioner Humphreys also provided an update on the implementation of a regulatory framework for the use of artificial intelligence systems. So a whole lot going on in the AI space that we'll be watching over the next few months and as we get ready for the summer national meeting in August. The other fun highlight is, once again, the Academy hosted a joint practice area dinner in Indianapolis, and we were able to relax, network, enjoy some time with our volunteers, with state regulators, with commissioners, with NAIC staff and other stakeholders at the very start of the national meeting. And it was just a great way to kick things off. So with that, Ted, I'll pass it back to you to get started with the practice area updates.
Thank you so much, Katie. So next, let me turn to Amanda for her recap of what went on in Indianapolis from the life perspective. Amanda?
Thanks, Ted. The Life Practice Council was very busy in Indianapolis with several presentations to the Life Actuarial Task Force, the Risk-Based Capital Investment and Evaluation Working Group, and the Life Risk-Based Capital Working Group, as well as regular touch points with the American Council of Life Insurers and the Society of Actuaries. Key issue priorities for the Life Practice Council at the NAIC Spring National Meeting included updating LRBC on the ongoing work of the C1 subcommittee on the CLO Comparable Attributes Project. The group is awaiting data from Moody's to continue their work, which they expect to be complete within the next year or so. The new C3 subcommittee presented to LRBC on a proposal to align C3 Phase 1 and C3 Phase 2 methodologies, which was very well received. So that look out for more work on that. And in addition to the standing LPC update, Academy staff joined EY in updating the Life Actuarial Task Force on the ongoing efforts to aggregate and analyze the VM22 field test data. In terms of key takeaways from the Spring National Meeting, asset adequacy testing related to offshore reinsurance remains a high priority for the Life Actuarial Task Force. The Life Practice Council continues to monitor and respond to the exposures of the draft actuarial guidelines. There was another exposure following the NAIC Spring National Meeting that the Life Practice Council is currently at work responding to. In addition, the GOES subgroup continues to target a January 1, 2026 effective date for the U.S. statutory framework implementation of the new GOES generator, with continued discussion on the cert scenarios, equity calibration criteria, and more. And then lastly, the Life Actuarial Task Force requested formally requested input by the Academy's Life Practice Council on non-guaranteed yearly renewable term, or YRT, reinsurance. So the LPC has formed a subgroup specifically to focus on that work. So look out for work product related to that in the coming months. That is all I have for life, so I will pass it over to Rob.
Thanks, Amanda. So the Casualty Practice Council, the Academy staff and volunteers had public presentations during the Casualty Actuarial Statistical Task Force meeting, as well as the joint meeting with the Catastrophe Risk Subgroup and the PNC RBC Working Group, and also had a couple of meetings following the Anti-Fraud Task Force. So during the CASTF meeting, the actuarial updates portion of the agenda, Rich Gibson, Senior Casualty Fellow, provided an update to regulators on the Casualty Practice Council and COPLFR, any updates that occurred since the last in-person CASTF meeting. Other professional updates to the task force included ABCD from Daryl Knapp and ASB from Kevin Dyke. During the joint meeting of the CAT risk subgroup and the PNC RBC working group, their most significant portion of their lengthy agenda was a presentation from Ron Wilkins, the chair of the Academy's PC-RBC committee. Ron gave an update on the committee's current activity as well as their 2025 priorities. Then also of note during that joint meeting was a presentation from Steve Kolk on catastrophe modeling. Steve was representing himself during the meeting, but he serves as the chair of the Academy's Extreme Events Committee. His presentation, among other things, made reference to the ACI and ACRI as well as wildfires. So following the Anti-Fraud Task Force meeting, Academy staff met separately with the LA Department of Insurance to discuss their ongoing anti-fraud related activities and how the Academy could be a helpful resource on those efforts. And we also had a meeting with the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud as well. So during the Big Data and AI working group meeting of the H Committee, much was discussed on the regulatory framework and use of AI systems. To PNC's interest, the 2585 discussions of regulatory oversight and accountability will focus on the 3 pillars of governance, transparency, and accountability, and I'm sure others will touch on the Big Data working group as well. So as far as key takeaways, there is a continued interest in the impact of catastrophes, especially in Virginia and California, to various lines of PNC insurance, specifically wildfire prevention and mitigation. And then we received confirmation that the charges of the Special Committee on Risk and Insurance will be transitioned to the other letter committees. So the Committee on Equity and Fairness and the Audit Committee specifically will be monitoring the C Committee going forward for those issues. So that's all from PNC. So I'm passing it on to Matthew.
Thank you so much, Rob. I just wanted to give some high-level updates from our Health Practice Council during the NAIC meeting in Indianapolis. So we actually gave several presentations. We gave one to the Health Actuarial Task Force, HADIF. We also gave one to the Senior Issues Task Force and also the Health RBC Working Group. So the first presentation was just an overall update on what the Health Practice Council has been up to since the last NAIC meeting in the fall. The second presentation was to the Senior Issues Task Force on the current state of long-term care insurance. That was actually done by Steve Schoenfeld, who's a member of our long-term care committee, and discussed issue brief we just produced recently on the state of long-term care, and also talked a little bit about the webinar that we had on the same topic back in February. Our next presentation was to the Health RBC Working Group on the Academy's forthcoming H2 underwriting report. This presentation was delivered by Steve Guski, who's the chair of our Health Solvency Subcommittee. So currently working on the report. This was a high-level overview of what's contained in the report, some of our recommendations, and looking forward to finalizing that report here in the near future and getting that to the NAIC. Some other priorities that came up during some of the other meetings at the NAIC included expiration of the premium tax credits within the Affordable Care Act markets. This will actually happen this year. And there's a big unknown on what will happen with the markets with affordability in regards to if the premium tax credits are not extended. In order to be extended, this would take an act of Congress. So this is something we're monitoring, and the states are closely monitoring as well for their consumers. Another big area that came up was pharmacy benefit managers, about specifically on transparency of practices and also potential increased regulation by the states that came up several times during the meeting. So we're keeping a look on that for some of the future work as well. Some of the key takeaways, NAIC will continue its work on the LTC multi-state review. This is also known as the MSA approach. And they are looking to achieve consensus for the regulators. The long-term care actual working group, which this work is done through, actually did not meet during Indianapolis, but it was brought up in several reports that they're still working on that as well. As noted before, the premium tax credits, if these aren't extended, may result in additional unaffordability of health insurance. So state-based exchanges, regulators are all waiting to see when to communicate basically to their consumers should Congress not extend the premium tax credits. So it's a bit of a waiting game at this moment. Another key takeaway is the NAIC is also working on a white paper on prior authorization with several consumer groups and trade associations. So I think they're looking to have that completed by the end of the year. So that's all I had in health land, and I will send it over to Will.
Thank you, Matthew. So from the RMFRC perspective, there are several key areas that we are monitoring going into and have taken several things away from the meeting. We're going to start in the international realm with the implementation of the Insurance Capital Standards, or the ICS. So at the end of 2024, the IAIS reached an important milestone and finalized the ICS and concluded that the U.S. aggregation method provides a basis for implementation, which led to NAIC creating the Aggregation Method Implementation Work Group, which will facilitate the domestic implementation of the ICS via the aggregation method. So they had their first meeting in Indianapolis, and so we will continue to monitor their progress and offer support throughout that. Another key takeaway is the Financial Sector Assessment Program, or FSAP. So a little background on the FSAP is a joint World Bank and IMF program. It is intended to assess several different facets of financial services. So a few of which being identifying some strengths and vulnerabilities within a country's financial system in order to reduce crisis, to determine how key sources of risks are being managed, assessing the overall state of the financial sector, and in order to help prioritize policy responses to that. So like I said, that assesses all sectors within financial services. So NAIC is participating in the insurance side of things, and their goal is to illustrate the U.S. state-based system of insurance regulation. And so this assessment occurs every 5 years. So again, we'll monitor their progress and assist where we can. Moving on to a few other international organization work streams that are going to be finalized throughout 2025. So going back to IAIS, they have several application papers scheduled to be released soon. One is the supervision of climate-related risks in the insurance sector. So this is resulting from several different exposures from last year that the Prudential Regulation Committee submitted comments for. So this climate-related risk paper is scheduled to be released soon, within the next month or so. There's also a supervision of AI in the insurance sector. Application paper is scheduled to be released in the third quarter this year, and that is something the Data Science and Analytics Committee within RMFRC submitted comments for as well. Additionally, there are a couple of climate-related papers in the industry being released soon, one of which is also from the IAIS on the Global Insurance Market Report, specifically examining the financial stability of Nat Cat protection gaps. OECD is also producing a Nat Cat risks paper, specifically examining wildfire and flood and the various approaches to responding to large-scale catastrophes. Moving on, so touching on the reinsurance asset adequacy actuarial guidelines, so they're continuing their work as Amanda referenced. So their timeline, I believe they have a couple of different rounds of exposures left, one in mid-April and the final one in early May. If the schedule holds true, the LATIF will consider adoption at the end of May, and then subsequent steps of the NAIC adoption process will follow. And moving on to AI. So AI continues to be a hot topic for many people. The aforementioned regulatory framework of AI systems was announced during a spring meeting, as well as the continued implementation of the AI model bulletin, which has been adopted by 24 states, as well as 4 additional jurisdictions that use it as insurance-specific regulation. Also previously mentioned was the health component to the AI and machine learning survey series on NAIC has been conducting. So the health report should be available again soon, I believe in the next month or so. And that is the 4th edition from the previous life, home, and private passenger auto. Once that health report is available, the AI subcommittee within the Academy and within RIMFRIC is going to announce a webinar occurring this summer, providing an analysis on those 4 surveys. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Ted.
Thanks so much for that update, Will. So, the Academy had a lot of engagement with regulators and other key stakeholders in Indianapolis. But what can we all expect from the NAIC in the coming months, leading up to the August meeting in Minneapolis? So again, I'm going to check in with my colleagues to see what we can expect. Let's start with Amanda. What's up next in life?
Thanks, Ted. Over the next several months, there will be many LATIF calls in which the Academy, specifically the LPC, will be participating, specifically on that yearly renewable term insurance requests that I discussed earlier. There will also be LATIF check-ins on the reinsurance actuarial guideline, as Will just discussed. And we do intend to give a covariance presentation on all of the RBC factors to the Life Risk-Based Capital working group between now and Minneapolis. So a lot to look forward to between now and then.
Great, thank you for that. Next, Rob, what's up in casualty?
So as we get into the summer, the AOWG, the Actual Opinion Working Group, will begin ramping up the production of their annual guidance that they produce each year that feeds into a lot of the COPL for annual publications. And as mentioned previously, the impact of catastrophes will continue to be a hot topic, especially given the wildfires earlier this year, and as we head into hurricane and wildfire season later this year. And then another thing to keep an eye on is that there will likely be some movement on the cybersecurity front in the cybersecurity working group within the H committee.
Great. Thanks for that, Rob. Now let's go to Matthew in health. Matthew?
Thank you, Ted. As noticed or talked about earlier, a few different things coming up for the NAIC before the Minneapolis meeting. So the first is, as mentioned, delivering the H2 underwriting report to the Health Risk-Based Capital Group. Also of note, for the Regulatory Framework B Committee, their work on prior authorization paper that we talked about a second ago with several consumer groups, trade associations will be working on that white paper, so hopefully have an update by the Minnesota meeting. Long-term care actual working group, as noted also, they didn't meet this time, but they're continuing working on the cost-sharing approach within the multi-state review framework, so we hopefully have some updates by the Minnesota meeting. One of the big items that I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about the PBM work is the NAIC formed a prescription drug working group that's a separate group from the PBM working group. So we'll be looking to, they're actually working on their charges right now, so we'll be looking forward to seeing what they're going to be working on, see how the Academy can interact with that new group as well. So they'll have a separate kind of working group covering all prescription drugs, and then a separate one continuing on with the work that's on PBMs, pharmacy benefit managers. So yeah, that's what I have coming up for next few months for NAIC. Lots of good health items. But yeah, just really appreciate it.
Appreciate that update. Will, what do you have to report with look ahead for REMFRIC?
Yeah, so I think one of the major talking points as we get into the summer, as Rob alluded to, is extreme weather and climate risk as it gets in the hurricane and wildfire season. So what comes along with that conversation is, the availability of insurance at those at-risk areas as well. So I think that is going to be one of the things we're looking forward to as we get in the summer, as well as monitoring the progress of the various initiatives I mentioned before, the implementation of the ICS, the FSAT progress, as well as the AI-related items being the health survey report, as well as the AI systems regulatory framework. I think that covers it for us.
Will and everyone else, thank you for those updates. Very much appreciated. And to those viewing, we hope you've enjoyed this post-NAIC webinar. If you have any questions on the activities we've highlighted or want to know more about the Academy's engagement with the NAIC, please reach out to any of the staff on this webinar. We can all be found at the website, www.actuary.org, and our contact information is included in the attached slide deck. You can always reach out to the team by emailing publicpolicy@actuary.org. And don't forget our regular blog updates. Not only do we regularly post about the NAIC meeting, but we also highlight some of the related work products and presentations that our volunteers do on these topics and more. But before we go, there are several Academy events we want to let you know about in 2025. The Academy will be hosting its first Insurance Investment Summit in New York City this May, and we'd love to see you there. We'll follow that up with the Future of Retirement Summit in Washington in June. Towards the end of the year, the Academy will hold its Life and Health Seminar, as well as the PC Opinion Seminar. To learn more about these events and others, go to www.actuary.org/calendar. We also encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn and to head over to www.contingencies.org to peruse the Academy's new policy forum, the Actuarially Sound blog, and the Actuary Voices podcast, as well as soon-to-be-released interview with NAIC commissioners. We hope you'll join us again this summer following the NAIC Summer National Meeting scheduled for August 10th through 13th in Minneapolis. If you will be in Minneapolis, let us know. We'd love to have you join us for our reception and dinner. And don't be shy. Tell your colleagues and coworkers about this webinar so that they can get in on all that the Academy and the NAIC are doing in the insurance space. Until next time, be well.